Hi, this is Sandra again with Life Over 60 with Sandra Hart. Thank you for joining me again. For those of you who are familiar with me, you know that my late husband suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. One day he just disappeared from the face of the earth and was believed to have been, and still believed to have been, murdered. At the time, it was very hard for us to really face. It took me 10 years to even talk about it, and it took me even longer to be able to write about it. I finally wrote Behind the Magic Mirror, and it was the story of my life with him, and also Magic Mirror Part 1 and 2, Behind the Magic Mirror. I also included an investigation that I did after 10 years. I went up into the area where he supposedly lived and was last seen, and I started interviewing as many people as I could. I was terrified because I didn't know whether the person who had killed my husband would be around and find us, but I still felt that it was a journey that I had to take to give closure to all of us. And I would like to share with you an interview, a very interesting person that I met while I was trying to find out what happened to my husband, my late husband, and I would like to share it with you now. We had driven up, it was in Tionesta, Pennsylvania, which is in the very wooded part of Pennsylvania. There are a lot of hunting and fishing camps there, so it's a very remote area of the world. We drove around into various camps knowing that that's what Jennings liked to do. He liked to live in that kind of atmosphere. And we parked our car and started to get the attention of a man who was chopping wood. He wouldn't talk to us. He wouldn't pay any attention to us. It was though we were invisible, and he kept on doing his business and ignoring us. So I was about ready to turn around and leave the premises when all of a sudden, when I had just given up hope, a man came out of a cabin nearby. A tall figure stepped out of the shadows of his cabin doorway. He slowly moved toward us, and the crimson glow of his lighted cigarette was a beacon smaller than a cat's eye, making his forward path. "You asking about Hart?" His words, spoken in bass tones that seemed to emanate from the deep within his chest, were music to my ears. Finally, maybe somebody who would talk to us. "Yes, did you know him?" I asked as he approached, giving us a better view of him in the cabin's light. His lean, muscular torso was supported by long legs that slightly bowed at the knee and were wrapped in tight, faded jeans that hung on his hips, loosely held by a large silver buckle that shimmered as he walked. In spite of the chilly evening, he wore only an undershirt, exposing large tattoos, some kind of a bird or something, on his right arm. Whether it was from anticipation or my absorbing his cold, I don't know, but a slight shiver went through my body as he reached us. "Might say, you relatives?" "Well, yes, we're trying to piece together what happened to him, and so far I haven't had much luck," I replied, figuring that I might as well be as honest as I could be, hoping against hope he just wasn't yanking us around. He stopped in front of us and cautiously took his time looking at me. Taking a long draw of his cigarette, then turning his head in the direction of the oblivious woodchopper, he released the smoke in his direction. "Don't mind him. He got too close to a double barrel when he was no higher than a squirrel. Can't hear a damn thing. Don't talk neither. Just chops away all day like some crazy fuck. Come on in. We'll jaw a bit," he said, indicating the direction of his cabin. Well, I feeling that I had nothing to lose. After several days up there, I was still at ground zero in my investigation, so I followed this man into his cabin, although a little risky. Involved in getting the information I needed to push forward, I guess was worth it. Once inside this partially furnished cabin, he cleared a plate from the table and motioned for me to sit down and take a seat on the couch near the wood stove that warmed the room. I wasn't exactly expecting company, just finished supper. How about a cup of coffee, he said, as he poured me a cup of coffee in a battered pot warming on the top of the stove. He stoked the fires in the steady warm cabin and poured himself a cup. With one strong arm he swung his chair around, the rungs facing me, and in one smooth move he straddled the chair with his long denim-covered legs. Sitting forward, his bare arms resting on the back rungs, he began his story. His worn face and furrowed brow accented his words as the information I was so eagerly hungry for was spun together in a dark tapestry before me. I was a bit nervous, of course, in anticipation of what we might learn and being there with a stranger with a closed door. Why you want to know about Hart, he said, looking directly at me. Well, I gave him, it was my personal mission and nothing else, just ensuring him that any information he could help me with would make my job a lot easier. Your husband, he was a good-looking dude, I'll say that for him. Could sing, too. Damn, he was good, and the ladies swarmed all over him like flies when he sung them tunes of his at Kelly's. I knew Kelly's was a bar in town. But he was stupid. He had a big mouth and it finally got him in trouble. I don't really know what happened to him, but I can tell you what I do know. I got this buddy, see? And one day he comes to me and asks me to drive him in my truck to see some friends of his who come from out of town. He said his Ford was laid up in the garage and he needed to see these guys before they left town. Now, my friend was going through hard times with his wife. She left him for another guy, he thinks. Well, anyway, they're separated. He was walking around with a long puss all the time, so when he said he needed a ride to Joe's motel, just a piece south toward Clarion, I said, why not? So I take my friend, and when we get there, he tells me to wait in the car. Now, being his friend and all, I thought that was kind of strange, but I do what he says, and I wait in the car, figuring I'd smoke a butt or two, till he comes out. Now, he gets out of the car and walks right to the room without having to even ask the room number to the cute little gal on the desk, and I remember she was pretty cute. In less than I can smoke one cigarette, he comes back out and doesn't say nothing, and I drive him back home. Now, he gets out of the car and leans through the window and says, "This trip never happened. This trip never happened." I looked at him and I said, okay. The next day, your husband was missing and my friend's walking around with a smile on his face. When the state police came to me, I told them my story and said I would go no further with it or testify or some shit like that. Excuse me, ma'am, I'd rather not rot in jail than be a dead man, if you know what I mean. Why are you telling me this now? I questioned. If he'd been so afraid to testify, then why would he be so free with strangers? I didn't understand that if he was telling me the truth, why now? Especially to people just off the street. I mean, I was curious as to why he would tell his story to me with the chance that I could go to the authorities with the information. Doesn't matter now. You'll find out soon enough. I ain't afraid no more. Simple as that. I'm afraid I don't quite understand. Get yourself to the county records office and figure it out. That's all I can say. Well, can you give me your friend's name? Well, I knew that that was kind of a dangerous question to ask. He just looked at me and remained silent for what seemed like an eternity. Then he got up, slid his chair back under the table in the side of the small room, and lit another cigarette. From what I could gather from this fellow's story, he firmly believed his friend had arranged for a hit on my husband. Because the next day after the motel meeting, my husband disappeared without a trace from the face of the earth. End of story. I sat there, staring to my empty coffee cup, feeling as though someone had just punched me in the stomach. If this man was telling the truth, then Jennings not only was dead, but more than likely suffered a horrible death at the hand of a man bent on retribution. I could only imagine what tortures were designed and executed to make Jennings suffer for his indiscretions and doing the wrong thing. That's all I know, lady. I've gone as far as I'm going to go. The rest is up to you. Nice talking to you. Need directions out of here? He said, showing me to the door. Maybe I should have been leery about this stranger. After all, he only gave me what he wanted, only part of the story. But I had a feeling that he was honest with us and with me. I don't know why, but I guess it was just my gut instinct that made me trust him. This stranger that I met did eventually help me find my way through my investigation in finding exactly what happened to my late husband. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening to my story, and I hope you will join me again. Have a great day.